The Great Fire had ended 3 days ago, but its wounds still scarred the savannah. Ash clung to the air. The earth, once golden, now black and broken. Ethan Cole drove his old Land Rover through the soaked dirt road, mud splashing against the sides of the vehicle. What the fire had not destroyed, the flood had claimed. Burned trees stood like skeletons, collapsed ground swallowed by water. The silence felt unnatural, heavy. Ethan had documented disasters before, wildfires, droughts, storms, but this was devastation layered upon devastation. First fire, then rain, then flood. As if nature could not decide how to erase this place. He lifted his camera slowly. Click, charred land, click, smoke rising from wet ashes. Then, he heard it, a sound so faint it barely existed. A cry, small, broken, alive. Ethan froze. Not wind, not an animal call carried from afar. This was close, too close. Another cry, weak, desperate. He stepped out of the vehicle, heart pounding, eyes scanning the ruined earth. And there, between burnt branches and mud, a lion cub, soaked, trembling, barely breathing, alone. But he was not the first to see it. A child stood nearby, silent, watching. The child did not move. He stood there, barefoot in the mud, eyes locked on the trembling lion cub. Ethan took a cautious step forward. "Hey, easy." The cub tried to crawl, failed, collapsed back into the wet ash. Another weak cry escaped its throat. The boy spoke softly, almost whispering. "He's been crying since morning." Ethan turned. The child couldn't have been older than 9. Rain-stained clothes, smoke-dusted face, but no fear, only worry. "Where is his mother?" Ethan asked. The boy's expression changed, not sadness, something heavier. "They say..." He hesitated, as if even repeating the words felt dangerous. "They say the fire took her." Ethan glanced at the cub again. Too small to survive alone, too weak to run. "Why didn't anyone help?" The boy looked back toward the village, a cluster of huts beyond the blackened trees. "They won't come near him." "Why?" Silence. Wind dragging ash across the ground. Then, because of what happened. Ethan felt a chill unrelated to the weather. "What happened?" The boy swallowed. "2 men tried. They carried him after the flood." He pointed toward the scarred earth. "One slipped. Broke his leg." Ethan listened. "Another got sick the next day. High fever." The boy's voice dropped lower. "The elders said it was a sign. A warning." Ethan exhaled slowly. There it was, the story forming, fear building its shape. "They think the cub is cursed?" The boy nodded. "They say he was born between fire and flood, marked by disaster." Another cry from the cub, weaker now. "They call him..." The boy whispered, "the bad luck lion." Ethan stared at the tiny creature, shivering, dying, branded by a story it never chose. Behind them, village voices echoed in the distance, watching, waiting, but no one approached. No one dared. Another weak cry, softer now, the kind of sound that didn't beg for help anymore. It surrendered. Ethan stepped closer, slow, careful. But before he could reach the cub, the boy moved. Without hesitation, without fear, bare feet splashing through mud and ash, he walked straight toward the trembling lion cub. Ethan's heart skipped. "Wait!" Too late. The child knelt. So close the cub could feel his breath. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Wind, silence, tension thick enough to choke on. The cub's tiny body trembled violently, eyes barely open. The boy slowly extended his hand. No sudden movement, no panic, just gentleness. Ethan held his breath. Every story he had heard in remote villages, every warning shaped by fear, echoed in his mind. The boy's fingers touched wet fur. The cub flinched, A sharp inhale from Ethan. But then, something unexpected. The trembling eased, just slightly. The cub did not snap, did not recoil. Instead, it leaned. A fragile, exhausted body surrendering into warmth. The boy whispered, voice softer than the wind. "It's okay. I'm here." The cub released a broken sound, not a cry, not fear, something closer to relief. Ethan stared. The air shifted, not with danger, but with something far more powerful, connection. Behind them, voices erupted from the distant huts, shocked, panicked, disbelieving. But neither the child nor the cub pulled away, two survivors in the ruins of fire and flood, finding comfort in the most unlikely place. And that was the moment everything changed. But what happened next, no one could have predicted. If you want to see how one child shattered an entire village's fear and how this tiny lion rewrote its destiny, subscribe now. The scream came first, sharp, terrified. A woman's voice tearing through the air, then another, and another. Within seconds, the silence of the ruined savannah exploded into chaos. Villagers rushed from the huts, feet pounding against wet earth, voices layered with panic. "Pull him away! Don't touch it! It's a bad sign!" Ethan spun around, heart racing. The boy remained kneeling, hand still resting gently on the lion cub's back. Unmoved, unafraid. An elderly man pushed through the crowd, breathing hard, eyes wide with horror. "Child!" He pointed with a shaking hand. "Step away from that creature!" The boy looked up slowly, calm. "He's dying." Murmurs rippled through the villagers, fearful, uneasy. The cub released a weak, broken sound, as if proving the child's words. The elder's voice dropped, heavy with warning. "You don't understand. That animal is marked. Fire, flood, misfortune follows it." A younger man grabbed Ethan's arm. "You're an outsider. Don't let the boy near it. We've seen what happens." Ethan glanced at the cub, then at the child, then back at the crowd, faces filled with something stronger than logic. Memory-shaped fear. Another villager shouted, "2 men suffered because of it. First injury, then fever. It's not natural." The tension thickened. The boy's small fingers tightened slightly in the cub's fur, protective, defiant. Ethan stepped forward, slow, measured, but every movement now carried weight. Dozens of eyes locked onto him, waiting, watching. Would he obey fear or challenge it? The cub trembled again, breathing shallow, fading. The boy whispered, "Please, help him." And in that moment, Ethan knew whatever decision he made next would change everything. The cub's breathing changed, short, shallow, irregular. Ethan saw it immediately, that fragile line between life and death, beginning to break. "He doesn't have much time," Ethan said quietly. The elder's face hardened. "Then it is the will of fate." The boy's head snapped toward him. "No!" His voice cracked, small but filled with something fierce. Ethan knelt beside the child, mud soaking into his knees. Slowly, he reached toward the cub. A wave of panic tore through the crowd. "Don't! Stop! You'll bring it upon us!" Hands grabbed at Ethan's shoulders, pulling, warning. But he did not pull back. His fingers hovered above the cub's ribs, trembling, not from fear, from the weight of the moment. Another weak movement from the cub, barely there. Ethan made his choice. He lifted the tiny lion cub into his arms. The reaction was instant. Gasps, cries. Someone stumbled backward. "It begins," a woman whispered. The boy stared, eyes wide, heart pounding. But Ethan felt something else. Not darkness, not danger, only bones, weightless, a body far too light. The cub's head fell against his chest. No resistance, no strength left to fight. Ethan spoke firmly. "He's not cursed." "He's starving!" No one answered. Fear had sealed their mouths. The elder stepped forward, voice low, shaking with certainty. "You have touched disaster." Ethan turned toward his vehicle. The boy stood frozen, torn between terror and hope. Then, he ran, straight toward Ethan. "Wait!" The villagers erupted again. "Child, come back!" But the boy reached them, breathing fast. "If he dies," he whispered, "I want him to die knowing someone stayed." Silence. Even the wind seemed to pause. Ethan looked at the boy, then slowly nodded. "Get in." Behind them, the village watched, helpless, terrified, certain they were witnessing the beginning of another tragedy. The Land Rover door slammed shut. The engine roared to life, and as the vehicle pulled away from the cursed ground, no one noticed the cub's breathing had steadied, just a little. Darkness fell quickly, too quickly. The sky, still heavy from the flood, swallowed the last traces of light. Ethan's Land Rover stood alone beside a narrow stretch of dry ground, surrounded by mud and the skeletal remains of burnt trees. The boy sat silently near the fire, arms wrapped around his knees, watching. The lion cub lay inside a folded blanket near Ethan's jacket, breathing, but barely. Ethan checked again. Still alive, still fragile. "He's colder," the boy whispered. Ethan nodded. The night air carried an unnatural chill, not the calm coolness of evening, but something sharper, biting. He added more wood to the fire. Flames leapt, shadows twisted violently against the blackened earth. Then, the first sound, a crack, soft, somewhere beyond the firelight. The boy stiffened. Ethan turned his head slowly, listening. Silence. Only wind sliding through dead branches. Ethan exhaled. Probably debris shifting, nothing more. But minutes later, another sound. Closer. A slow, dragging movement through wet soil. The cub stirred weakly inside the blanket. A faint, distressed whimper. The boy's voice trembled. "Something's out there!" Ethan rose to his feet, eyes scanning the darkness. The fire suddenly flickered, violently, as if struggling to breathe. Wind? No. The air was still, too still. And then, the cub's breathing changed, rapid, panicked, tiny chest rising and falling in sharp bursts. Ethan rushed forward, knee hitting mud. "No, no, stay with me." The boy leaned closer, fear forgotten. "What's happening?" Before Ethan could answer, the fire went out. Instantly, no warning, no gradual fade, just darkness, complete. The boy gasped. The cub cried out weakly, and somewhere in the black void surrounding them, something moved. Darkness swallowed everything. No fire, no horizon, only breath, fast, uneven. The boy's voice trembled. "Ethan? I can't see." Ethan didn't answer. He was listening, every instinct alert. Then, a sound, a slow step pressing into wet mud. Not wind, not debris. Heavy, measured, closer. The cub let out a weak, frightened cry from the blanket. The boy panicked. "What is that?" Ethan moved instantly, pulling the flashlight from his jacket. Click. Nothing. Dead. A second step. Closer now. A shape shifted in the darkness. Large. Silent. The boy grabbed Ethan's arm, fear flooding back all at once. Another step. Then a low sound rolled through the night. Deep, vibrating. Not a growl. Not quite. Something older. Ethan's pulse hammered. Predator. Without light. Without fire. Without warning. The cub's tiny body shook violently. Ethan made a decision. Fast. "Stay behind me." He reached blindly, lifting the cub into one arm. With the other, he grabbed a burning branch's remains from the ground. Still warm, still faintly glowing, a fragile ember against infinite darkness. The sound stopped. Silence. Thick. Waiting. And then, two golden eyes opened in the black, watching them, unblinking. Two golden eyes floated in the darkness, unblinking, silent. The boy's grip tightened around Ethan's arm. "Ethan, what is that?" Ethan didn't answer. He slowly raised the glowing ember, its weak orange light trembling in his hand. The eyes did not move. Then, a shape emerged, massive, muscular, stepping soundlessly from the black. The boy's breath caught, a lioness, scarred, soaked with mud, her coat streaked with ash, but it was her gaze, locked not on Ethan, not on the boy, on the cub. The tiny lion cub trembled violently in Ethan's arms. A low, thunder-like rumble rolled from the lioness's chest. The boy whispered in terror, "His mother?" Ethan's heart pounded. Impossible. They said the fire had taken her. Another step, slow, deliberate. Ethan stood frozen, mind racing between fear and disbelief. The lioness stopped just beyond the ember's glow, close enough now, close enough to see exhaustion, pain, and something else, desperation. The cub made a weak, broken sound. The lioness's ears twitched. Another rumble, but this time, different. Not a warning, a call. The cub responded instinctively, a faint cry, fragile, alive. Ethan's breath shook. The boy stared, wide-eyed. The lioness lowered her head, slowly, carefully. Ethan hesitated, then gently knelt, holding the cub forward. The world held its breath. The lioness leaned in, nose touching the cub. A pause, one eternal second. Then the cub pressed forward with the last of its strength, and the lioness released a sound that shattered everything they believed. Not rage, not threat, but a soft, broken chuff of recognition. They said she was dead. They said the cub was cursed. They were wrong, but what happened next changed Ethan's life forever. Subscribe now. Morning came quietly, as if the night had never happened. Soft golden light spilled across the savannah, revealing mud, ash, and 3 exhausted survivors. The lioness lay beneath a crooked acacia tree, breathing slow, watchful. The cub rested against her chest, tiny body rising and falling in fragile rhythm. Alive. The boy sat nearby, unable to stop staring. She stayed. Ethan adjusted his camera slowly, hands still carrying traces of disbelief. Not once during the night had the lioness shown aggression, only vigilance, only protection. But Ethan knew something else now. The village, their fear, their certainty. They believed this cub was a curse. They believed the mother was gone. He looked toward the distant horizon, thinking, calculating, then finally, deciding. "We're going back." The boy turned sharply. "To the village?" Ethan nodded. "They need to see this." The lioness lifted her head slightly, amber eyes locked on Ethan, silent, measuring. Ethan spoke softly, almost respectfully. "They're afraid of you, but they're more afraid of him." The cub stirred weakly. The lioness's tail flicked once. Ethan stepped closer, slow, careful, no sudden movement. The boy held his breath. For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, the lioness rose, muscles tense, eyes sharp. Ethan froze. But instead of threat, she stepped toward the cub, nudged him gently forward, then looked back at Ethan. A silent agreement. The journey took hours, across scarred land, through drying mud, until finally, the first huts appeared, and within seconds, the village saw them. A man, a child, a lion cub, and behind them, a lioness. At first, no one understood what they were seeing. A man, a child, a lion cub. And then someone screamed, "The lioness!" Panic detonated across the village. Women grabbed their children. Men stumbled backward. Tools fell into the mud. "She's back!" "No, that's impossible!" "Get inside!" The lioness walked forward slowly, each step calm, measured, terrifying. Not hunting, not charging, just present. Ethan stopped at the edge of the huts. The boy stood beside him, small hand gripping Ethan's sleeve. The cub shifted weakly in Ethan's arms. A fragile movement, but enough. Gasps rippled through the villagers. "It's alive! The cursed cub!" The elder emerged from between two huts, face pale, eyes locked on the lioness. Fear, confusion, disbelief. "You!" His voice trembled. "You brought death back to us." The lioness stopped, amber eyes scanning the crowd. Silent, unreadable. Tension thickened. One wrong move, and chaos would erupt. The cub released a tiny, broken sound. Soft, barely audible, but the lioness reacted instantly. Her head turned, body alert, a low, protective rumble rolling from her chest. The villagers froze, waiting for violence, expecting disaster, but instead, she stepped closer to Ethan, closer to the cub, then slowly lowered her head. The entire village held its breath. The lioness gently touched the cub with her nose, a mother's gesture, nothing more, nothing less. Silence crashed over the crowd. No attack, no rage, only recognition, only care. And for the first time, fear hesitated. Silence gripped the village. No one moved, no one breathed. The lioness remained still, her head resting gently against the cub, a live proof of everything they believed could not exist. Then, a small sound. Footsteps, soft, barely heard. The boy. Ethan turned sharply. "Wait!" But the child had already stepped forward, past Ethan, past safety, toward the lioness. Gasps erupted. "Stop him! Child!" But fear had done something strange. It had frozen them. The boy walked slowly, heart pounding so loud it drowned the world. The lioness lifted her eyes, locked onto him, watching, measuring. The cub stirred weakly. The boy knelt, just like before, mud beneath his knees, silence roaring in his ears. With trembling fingers he extended his hand, not to the cub, to her, to the lioness. One impossible second. 2, 3. Then, the lioness leaned forward. The crowd flinched, but instead of danger, she pressed her massive head gently into the child's palm. A collective gasp, shock, disbelief, tears. The boy's fear shattered instantly, replaced by awe. "She's warm," he whispered. The cub released a faint sound. The lioness closed her eyes briefly. Trust, acceptance, connection. Something ancient and wordless. Behind them, the elder's staff slipped from his hand. No one noticed, because in that moment, an entire village watched their greatest fear dissolve into something else, something softer, something human. The shift was undeniable. Where fear once stood, something else now filled the air. Wonder, relief, disbelief slowly melting into understanding. The villagers stepped closer, cautiously at first, then with growing curiosity, eyes no longer fixed on danger, but on the cub, on the lioness, on the child who had touched the impossible and remained unharmed. The elder approached last, slow, heavy steps across the mud. He stopped before the lioness, before the cub. For a long moment he said nothing. Then quietly, "We were wrong." Not loud, not proud, but honest. The words rippled through the village like a released breath. Ethan spoke gently. "He isn't a curse. He's just a survivor. And she," he glanced at the lioness, "is just a mother." Silence. Then a woman stepped forward, placing a small bowl of water on the ground. Another followed. Food, space, respect, not offered to a symbol of disaster, but to life itself. What followed was something no one had planned. Children laughing again, men lowering their guarded stances, women watching with softened eyes. A village once paralyzed by fear, now standing in the presence of the very thing they had rejected. But Ethan knew, love alone was not enough. "This place can't protect them forever," he said. The elder nodded slowly, this time without resistance. Together, they made the decision, not from fear, but from care. By sunset, arrangements were already in motion. The cub would be transferred to a protected wildlife reserve. Experts, safety, a future. The lioness, free to return to the wild, no longer hunted by misunderstanding. The farewell was quiet, heavy, beautiful. The boy held the cub one last time, tears filling his eyes. "You're not bad luck," he whispered. "You're the bravest thing I've ever seen." Ethan watched the transport vehicle disappear into the glowing horizon, and behind him, the village stood changed. They had not escaped a curse. They had received a gift, the chance to confront fear, to choose compassion, to remember who they truly were. If this story touched you, if you believe fear should never decide who deserves to live, subscribe now, because stories like this don't just entertain, they change the way we see the world, and the next one might stay with you forever.